Hello, and thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Storytime with One Big Hoax. I'm your host, Trina Hoax. So, today we're going to be talking about the Texas Killing Fields. Now, the Texas Killing Fields is an infamous area outside of Houston, Texas, where, since the beginning of the 1970s, 34 bodies have been found. This moniker, the Texas Killing Fields, has been given to a stretch of land along I 45, which goes through Houston to Galveston. In addition to 34 bodies of young girls and women ranging in age from 12 to 25 being found, scores of girls and women have disappeared from the area and remain unaccounted for. Even though the FBI has joined League City Police to solve the murders, very few have been so. So let's go ahead and delve into the tragic cases of the victims who have been found in the Texas killing fields. I'll be introducing them to you in order of their disappearance dates rather than when they were found. On November 26, 1971, the body of 13-year-old Colette Anise Wilson was found near Addicts Reservoir. She disappeared from Alvin, Texas after being dropped off at a bus stop by her band director on June 17, 1971, at CR 99 and State Highway 6. On July 2, 1971, the body of 14-year-old Brenda K. Jones was found floating in Galveston Bay near the Seawall Parkway and near I 45. She was last seen walking to Galveston Hospital where she was going to visit her aunt on July 1, 1971. Rhonda Renee Johnson and Sharon Lynn Shaw, 14 and 13 respectively, disappeared on August 4, 1971. They were last seen walking along Seawall Boulevard near the beach. A few months later, on January 3, 1972, two boys were fishing in Clear Lake. While fishing, they found what they thought was a sports ball. But to their horror, however, they discovered what they had found was instead a human skull. A month and a half later, searchers found the rest of the body, along with the body of another girl. They were in a nearby marsh. According to the coroner's report, filed February 17, 1972, the skull was determined to be that of Sharon Lynn Shaw. Dental records and a crucifix wrapped around the jawbone were used to identify her. The other body was physically identified as Rhonda Renee Johnson. Her oldest victim yet, Gloria Ann Gonzalez, was just 19 when she disappeared on October 28, 1971, near her apartment in Houston, Texas, on Jacqueline Street. Her remains were found on November 23, 1971, near Addicts Reservoir, in the same area where Colette Wilson was found. Allison Ann Craven was just 12 years old when she was reported missing. The date was November 9, 1971. Her and her mom's apartment was near I 45, and her mom reported her missing after returning home from shopping. The police found partial remains 3 months later that were determined to belong to Allison. They found two hands and some bones from an arm and some teeth. On February 25, 1972, the rest of her remains were found 10 miles away in a field in Pearland, Texas, near I 45. Two 15-year-olds, Debbie Catherine Ackerman, or Ackerman, and Maria Talbot Johnson, were last seen on November 15, 1971. They were reportedly seen near an ice cream parlor in Galveston trying to hitchhike to Houston. They were said to have gotten into a white van by someone who agreed to take them to Houston. Both of their bodies were found in Turner's Bayou near Texas City on November 17, 1971. They were partially nude and were bound. Kimberly Ray Pitchford was 16 when she was last seen. She had gone to Dobie High School for a driving test on January 3, 1973. Her body was found 2 days later, on January 5th, by two boys in a ditch in Angleton, Texas. Two girls, Brooks Bracewell and Georgia Caroline Greer, 12 and 14 respectively, were last seen at a convenience store off of I 45 on September 6, 1974. Police originally chalked their disappearances up to them having run away. In 1976, the skeletal remains of a girl were found in a culvert in Alvin, Texas. They were not identified until 1981, when a new detective took over the case of Brooks and Georgia. In addition to the original bones that were found, re examination of the ditch on April 3rd, 1981, yielded more remains and the remnants of a gold sweater and plaid pants. The original remains were determined to be that of Brooks. Suzanne Susie Bowers was just 12 the last time that she was seen. She was walking along a 3-minute route between her grandmother's house at the 4000 block of Avenue S and her own home at the 3100 block of Avenue P at around 10:45 a.m. on May 21st, 1977 in Galveston, Texas. The 7th grader was going home to get her swimming suit to go to the beach. Her skeletal remains were found 2 years later in Alta Loma, Texas on March 25th, 1979. In addition to a female victim, this case includes a male victim as well. Tina Gail Klaus, 17, and her husband, Harold Dean Klaus Jr., 21, were found on January 12, 1981, in Harris County in a northern, boggy, wooded area just north of Houston city limits. There was a dog let out by a homeowner to wander, and when it returned, to the horror of its owner, it was bearing a decomposing human arm. The authorities were called, and search parties went out into the wooded area to look for other remains. What they found were the decomposed bodies of Tina and Harold. The couple was found near Wallaceville Road. Despite significant decomposition, it was determined that they were both victims of homicide. Tina had been strangled, Harold had been bound and gagged and beaten to death. In 2021, forensic genealogists positively identified Dean and Tina, and in 2022, their daughter Holly Marie was located alive in Oklahoma. Michelle Angela Garvey, who was 15, supposedly ran away from her New London, Connecticut home on June 1st, 1982. Her body was found on July 1st, 1982, in Baytown, Texas, 1 month after she went missing. It was determined that she was strangled to death and that she may have been sexually assaulted. Her body was disposed of in a field after she died, possibly hours after her murder. She was found near where 2 other unidentified murder victims were found in 1981. Those were the 2 I just spoke of who were identified in 2021 as Dean and Tina Klaus. Michelle was identified in January 2014 through the efforts of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the Harris County Police Department, who had contacted her family and retrieved samples of their DNA for testing. Susan Lee Eads was a 20-year-old cocktail waitress who left for work from her home in Harris County, Texas at around 4:30 on August 30th, 1983 to go to work. The next day, she was found naked with bruises on her back and her face. Susan had been strangled to death with what she was wearing, which had been used as a tourniquet. Her car was found in a parking lot nearby. An autopsy report stated that she had been sexually assaulted. She was last seen at a local club with a man wearing a cowboy hat. Her mother said that she received a phone call from an unidentified man who said he had photos of Susan. He referred to himself as Bill and said that he lived in Houston, Texas. DNA from Susan's body was matched to Arthur Raymond Davis Jr., a Vietnam War veteran and a boat captain. He reportedly died on January 16th, 1984, after a single vehicle accident. Heidi Marie Villarreal Fay was a 25-year-old cocktail waitress last seen on October 10th, 1983, at a convenience store located off West Main Street in Hobbs in League City, Texas. Her remains were found on April 4th, 1984, after a dog brought her skull to a house in Calderfield on the 3000 block of Calder Road near League City, Texas. Sandra K. Ramber, who was 14, was last seen at her family's home in Santa Fe, Texas, on October 26, 1983. They figured she was missing because the front door was left open, food was in the oven, and her purse and coat were still in the house. She was initially believed to have just taken a quick jaunt to the store, but she never returned. Laura Lynn Miller, a 16-year-old sophomore at Clear Creek High School in League City, Texas, had just moved there. Though she was musically gifted, she suffered from seizures which affected her participation in choir. She was last seen on September 10th, 1984, at the same convenience store that Villarreal Fi was last seen at a year earlier in Lake City. She was using a payphone to call her boyfriend. It took police 17 months to locate her. What they found was her remains. They were found on February 2nd, 1986, just 60 feet away from where police had found Villarreal Fi the year before. Ellen Ray Simpson Beeson was last seen with friends on July 29th, 1985, at the Texas Moon Club in League City, Texas, where she met local construction worker Clyde Hedrick. Later that same night, she told her friends that she and Hedrick were going to go swimming. Her decomposed remains were discovered underneath a sofa in a wooded area beside Old Causeway Road in Galveston County. The medical examiner was unable to determine the cause of death at the time, but upon the exhumation of her remains in 2012, it was ruled that she had suffered several skull fractures. She was 29. Michelle Angela Garvey, who was 15, supposedly ran away from her New London, Connecticut home on June 1st, 1982. Her body was found on July 1st, 1982, in Baytown, Texas, 1 month after she went missing. It was determined that she was strangled to death and that she may have been sexually assaulted. Her body was disposed of in a field after she died, possibly hours after her murder. She was found near where two other unidentified murder victims were found in 1981. Those were the two I just spoke of who were identified in 2021 as Dean and Tina Klaus. Michelle was identified in January 2014 through the efforts of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the Harris County Police Department, who had contacted her family and retrieved samples of their DNA for testing. Audrey Lee Cook, 30, exceeds the age range of 12 to 25 I stated earlier, and is nearly the oldest person on this list. She was last heard from in late December of 1985. Audrey's remains were found in a field in the 3000 block of Calder Road on the same day that the body of Laura Miller was located nearby. The victims' bodies were not buried, but rather hidden from view. Both were left on their backs near a tree. Cook had a small caliber gunshot wound to the back. Her spine was severed and she had suffered injuries to several of her ribs. She was identified in April of 2019 along with Donna Prudhomme by family tree DNA using genetic genealogy. Shelley Kathleen Sykes was 19 when she was last seen leaving her waitressing job at a seafood restaurant in Galveston, Texas, just prior to 12 a.m. on May 24th, 1986. The following day, her car was found stuck in the mud and abandoned on the side of an I-45 access road south of Galveston Causeway. It was covered in blood. The driver's side window was broken and blood was found on the door and on the driver's seat. Shelley's body has never been found, but John Robert King and Gerald Peter Schwartz have been charged and convicted of her murder. Suzanne Renee Richardson, 22, was working as a night clerk at Casa del Mar condominiums on Seawall Boulevard in Galveston, Texas. She was last seen at work on October 7th, 1988, by resort security guards at around 6 a.m. An employee who was sleeping in the room above Richardson's office heard a loud scream of a female shortly thereafter. The same employee stated that a car door slammed shut while another scream was heard, and then there was the sound of a car speeding away from the parking lot. A guest came to check out at around 6:30 a.m. and discovered the desk abandoned. Donna Marie Prudhomme, 34, was last seen in July of 1991 in Nashua Bay, Texas. A little over 2 months later, on September 8th, 1991, a local resident came across her badly decomposed body in a field beside Calder Road. A medical examination concluded that she had died at least 6 weeks prior, yet a cause of death could not be determined. She was identified in April of 2019 along with Audrey Cook by family tree DNA with the use of genetic genealogy. Lynette Bibbs, 14, and Tamara Fisher, 15, disappeared after visiting a Houston, Texas club for teenagers on February 1st, 1996. A 22-year-old male later claimed to have dropped the friends off at a motel near the city's center on Old Spanish Trail. The bodies of Lynette and Tamara were found dumped by a rural road 2 days later on February 3rd, 1996, in Cleveland, Texas. Crystal Jean Baker, 13, was last seen near I-45 on March 5th, 1996, in Texas City. She was leaving her grandmother's house and headed for a convenience store to use a phone after an argument to ask a friend if she could stay with her. 2 hours later, her body was found. She had been raped, strangled, and dumped over the I-10 bridge above the Trinity River. Kevin Edison Smith was convicted of capital murder in her death in 2012 and sentenced to life in prison. In 2019, Governor Greg Abbott signed into law the Crystal Jean Baker Act, which permits the collection of DNA from individuals arrested for certain felonies prior to conviction. Laura Smithers, 12, was last seen in Friendswood, Texas. She was jogging down her street on April 3rd, 1997. She told her mother that she was going on a 20-minute run. 17 days later, on April 20th, 1997, her body was found in a retention pond in Pasadena, Texas. In 1998, her parents established the Laura Recovery Center, a nonprofit organization that aids the search for and recovery of kidnapping victims. William Lewis Reese was convicted of the murder of Laura Smithers, Kelly Cox, and Jessica Kane in June 2022. Kelly Ann Cox. She was 20 years old and was last seen July 15th, 1997, at a gas station and convenience store in Denton, Texas. She had locked herself out of her car and was making a phone call to her boyfriend to get help from him. She was using the station's outdoor payphone. Nearly 19 years later, on March 18th, 2016, Kelly's remains were discovered after suspected serial killer William Lewis Reese directed investigators to search an area in Brazoria County, Texas. Reese confessed to and was convicted of the murders of Laura Smithers, Kelly Cox, and Jessica Kane in June 2022. Jessica Lee Kane, who was 17, was last seen at a restaurant near a mall in Clear Lake, Texas, dining with friends at around 1:30 a.m. She was reported missing on August 17th, 1997, after her father had found her truck abandoned along I-45. On March 18th, 2016, Jessica's remains were finally found in a field off of East Orem Road next to Hobby Airport. Suspected serial killer William Lewis Reese directed investigators to search the area where her remains were found. Reese was convicted of the murders of Laura Smithers, Kelly Cox, and Jessica in June of 2022. Tot Tran Harriman, 57, is the oldest person on our list. Tot was visiting relatives in Texas and had mapped out a route between League City and Corpus Christi, Texas. She departed at approximately 5 o'clock a.m. on July 12, 2001, from her son's residence near League City. Tot was last seen driving her 1995 Lincoln Continental along Highway 35. She has not been seen since. Sarah Ann Lewis Trusty, 23, was last seen in Algoa, Texas, near her church, riding her bicycle at around 11 o'clock p.m. on July 12, 2002. Her body was discovered on July 28, 2002, in a dike by fishermen in Texas City. And last but not least, Teresa Lynn Venegas was last seen in Dickinson, Texas, walking near the Green Cake subdivision on October 31st, 2006. She was 16. 3 days later, she was found strangled, raped, and with her hair cut off. She was in a field across from Dickinson High School. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this entire podcast. I'm really glad that you are here. I hope you'll join me next time for Story Time with One Big Hoax. Thank you.